بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, brothers and sisters, to our video, a second conversation with Dr. Hatem El Haj and Dr. Yasir Qadhi. The two sheikhs, they did a recent video covering issues like gender roles, apostasy, and modern issues. We thought that this video would be of particular use for us because they cover a lot of usuli points, things like Maslahah, shatabi, and a lot of misconceptions are brought in as a result of this. And then you have a polarized view. You have on the one side people who are very adamant and very ardent and very rigid, and on the other side you have people who think who are quite pliant. And unfortunately, they start bringing in things like gradualism, and you start to muddy the waters, and then Islam becomes quite ambiguous. You'll get an appreciation of what I mean later as we discuss it. So to discuss this issue, again, we have Dr. Muhammad Al-Masri, professor of physics by profession, and a scholar who's written extensive works on usul, on fundamental issues of governance, all available both in Arabic and being translated into English, all available for free. So we do urge you to refer to this material. You'll get an appreciation of the depth of scholarship in the written works. In addition to this, if you like and subscribe to our channel, you will have access to considerable works. We have an entire Hadith series coming. We have even relatively soon, we'll have a discussion on Ibn Hazm's Rahimah's Al-Muhalla will be published as well. This is an audio series, and Hadith and Usul al-Fiqh as well. So we do encourage you to subscribe, to like, to share our content, and if you have questions, to confront us as well.
And also the series of Ibn Salah al-Shahrazawri about
the introduction to Hadith. That's being broadcast every week on Wednesdays.
It's already available and will be broadcast bit by bit. It's all completely recorded already in time past anyway.
So basically, you'll get an appreciation over time as to our point of view, our usul. Our viewpoint is not of the type which is overly focused on just critiquing without providing solutions. At the same time, we're not as pliant to mold Islam based on whims and desires. So that's our perspective. And the format for today, to aid with getting through essentially 1 hour, 20-minute video, I will take the license of speeding it up somewhat. So it's easy enough to follow, but just in the interest of brevity, I have taken notes and I have a good idea of what's being discussed, so I can prompt or indeed allow the professor to interject as and when he feels. But inshallah, we will attempt to play pretty much the bulk of this video so that you can benefit, and we'll add the link to the video as well, inshallah. So I'll kick off first with the initial introduction from Dr. Yasir Qadhi, which will provide some context.
Second podcast. Today, inshallah, we wanted to talk a little bit about the issue of the application of fiqh in modern times, and the fact that sometimes what we find as the ideal position is not one that is the most conducive to the time frame we live in, and that raises a whole host of questions. The issue of gradualism, the issue of pragmatism, the issue of understanding classical fiqh in modern times, to what level there's allowed, to what level there isn't allowed. So today we're going to be talking about a number of topics that overall deal with the internal leeway that the Sharia provides, and where that leeway crosses the red line in terms of fine-tuning the ahkam of our fiqh. So with this overall introduction, Sheikh, can you summarize for us certain principles that every single student of knowledge should be aware of when it comes to understanding ahkam, and the famous principle taghayyur al-fatwa bi-ghayri zaman, and all of these types of maxims and al-urf muhakkam? Can you help us for whatever you have in mind to summarize the most essential qawaid and maxims that the student of knowledge should be aware of?
Would you like to have a property business that generates?
And that's would you like to have a property business? That's an advert there. Apologies. Yeah, I'm just gonna mute until that goes. The joys of YouTube. Okay. There.
First, jazakumullah khair for the invitation. And then, as you said, there are certain principles that are immutable principles, Islamic principles that are immutable, they are unchanging. The beauty of Islam and the genius of the Sharia of Islam is that we have constant objectives, we have overarching maxims that do not change, and we have a very flexible legal framework When we say flexible legal framework, people should not misunderstand this to mean that we can basically play around with our detailed rulings whenever we want by tashahi or by passions and desires and biases. This is not true. So Imam Shatabi has a statement that is very accurate, very precise, and very thoughtful about the divine address not being subject to change. He says that had the Sharia had it been meant for this world to be eternal, the Sharia would never need to be changed. We would never need a new divine address to humanity. It's done. Khitab al-Ilahi is done, has been fulfilled by the Sharia of Islam. And if this world was meant to be eternal, or were meant to be eternal, which it is not, the Sharia will be relevant and applicable for eternity. And he says when customs change, and new rulings are applied to new customs, this is not a change in the divine address itself. However, it is basically those customs falling under different principles of the Sharia that continue to be fixed. So imagine three layers: the highest objectives of the Sharia, the overarching maxims and principles of the Sharia, and then the flexible legal framework. The Sharia, the objectives are stable. They are fixed. They're up here. The principles are here. And those are basically the legal maxims, the manatat of al-ahkam, the effective cause of al-ahkam, and then so on. Those are fixed. And then underneath, there is the changing customs, the changing circumstances, changing realities. And those changing realities, when they move, when they change, they fall under different principles. The principles are fixed, the reality is changing, they would fall under different principles. There has been, and there will continue to be, if we were to keep the relevance and the practicality of the Sharia, then we will have to recognize that there has always been a dialectic between the law and the reality. And this dialectic was recognized by the scholars. The erudite, verifying scholars have always recognized this and have always been ready to adapt to new realities and to adjust al-ahkam to new realities. If you remember in our previous discussion about the Khilafah, we talked about how the scholars, out of their interest in and desire for peace and order, they were flexible enough to accept sort of different forms of conferring legitimacy on imams, whether it's through ahd or passing on the covenant or even forceful seizure of power in the interest of peace and order. You could say that this is like a manifestation of their pragmatism or their basically adaptation to different realities of their times. So we need to make sure at the end of the day that only qualified scholars will be entrusted with this very important work of tajdeed, or the renewal and revival of the Sharia. And the Prophet ﷺ used the word tajdeed. إن الله يبعث لهذه الأمة على رأس كل 100 عام من يجدد لها دينها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will commission, send to this ummah, at the beginning of every century or at the turn of every century, he who will, or they who will. Many people say it is they, not he. They who will renew its deen for it. Renew. He used renewal. He did not use restoration. He used renewal. And many people want to say that it is only about restoration. It is only about bringing the people back to the way things were during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, radiallahu anhum. And of course, it is mainly about this. It's mostly about this. It's mostly about the fact that the ummah can drift away from the Islamic ideals and needs to be reminded of the Islamic ideals. But it is also about ijtihadi renewal. It's also about adjusting to new realities and adapting to new realities, not simply restoration, because restoration would be suitable for basically restoring a fixed structure, like a static fixed structure, like a building to its old glory. But Islam is a lot more dynamic than this.
So,
So I just want to interject there for a second.
Yeah.
So just to recap, so it's basically talking about shatabi, different changes in customs, different objectives, changing realities, and also flexibility. And in particular, I know you're probably going to circle back to the issue of seizure of power. He gave that as an example.
Let's go to the more basic things. The whole thing is the problem is that Hatem El Haj and so on, they and Qadhi and all scholars through history after the time of Sahaba roughly, but even some of the Sahaba, but after that until very recently, they did not take the Quran as Imam, as leader. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the book of Musa, Kitab Musa, Imaman wa Rahma, Imaman wa Kitab Musa, although it has some harsh regulation suitable for that time, but it was Imaman wa Rahma. Kitab Musa itself, not what in the Old Testament and the Talmud. This is a good part of it is fabrication and lie against Allah's messenger, but we're not going to discuss that. Anyway, but what's genuinely in the book as revealed. If the book of Musa, who is only valid and being subordinate to the last book, the Quran, because the Quran is confirming what's previously, and muhaymin dominant over it, having hegemony over it, which means both abrogating but also correcting, because the previous books in the hand of the people are not that what has been revealed. So that's the problem which has happened essentially after the time of Sahaba. It started with Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, the cursed one, when he started changing the religion and undermining the ruling system of Islam, and some other also Islamic ruling, and interfered and ordered nobody should narrate a hadith and do what they call qas. They call qas, the one who narrates story, meaning stories about jihad and seerah and so on, to encourage fighter for fight, to go to jihad and so on. He prohibited except with his permission. So this man has done things which are where the dhikr not protected, the Quran not protected, and the Sunnah is totality in the way we described in our book of Tawheed. The Islam would have mutilated completely, like Paul the Tarsus, the alleged apostle of Christ, we met him in imaginary world of glory, deformed Christianity into a completely different religion. But the dhikr luckily is protected, so he did some damage, contaminated it. So since that time, all fiqh, all tafsir and so on is partly or fully contaminated. Yeah. Now, if you take the Quran as Imam and the totality of the Sunnah, now notice I say totality, not this one hadith and this one hadith, and review again the validation of a hadith, but this is a secondary issue, because really for these fundamental usul and so on, we don't need even a hadith, but there are some hadith which are very helpful, and they're mutawatir. So that's no issue there. So it's part of the political. Some of them are even mutawatir by wordly, and some mutawatir in meaning, have a common meaning, a hard core of meaning, which we can establish your certitude, and narrated so many narrations that you can establish it. But the hardcore meaning will be usually already in the Quran. If you read it properly, take it as Imam, as leader. So that's number one. That was not taken since after the time of Sahaba, unfortunately. Secondly, the people did notice that the basic ruling of things in the universe, the basic ruling is permissibility. They are mubah. But that was not just mentioned as one or two lines, without really going deep in it. Again, the basic ruling permissibility, that everything in the universe as entity is fundamentally pure and good, both pure from ritual purity and good in itself. It can be consumable, it can be used for building material and so on, but also human action. The basic ruling, all human action are permissible until the Shariah decide a certain action to be permissible and haram or undesirable. But the basic ruling is permissibility, and that's based on fundamentally reading the Quran properly. Especially the issue of action have been the stumbling block for Hizb Tahrir and for many of these fuqaha. Yeah. So based on that, they have wavered about maslahah, mafsada, have wavered about is maslahah, masalih mursal a source of ahkam, one of the usul, because this usul is Quran, Sunnah, ijma', qiyas. They don't decide what means qiyas and maslahah, etc., etc. If you look to that, really, you find there's only one type of qiyas which we consider it is dictated by necessary reason, which is actually enshrined in the text, which is the general meaning of that, which is the illah, the general meaning of a hukum, which applies in any situation where the essential general meaning is there. That's qiyas on illah shar'iyya, which you can extract from the text, or the principle of a fortiori. For example, if the Quran gives you an injunction, don't say to your parents, it's by necessity indicates that you don't do worse because they say, oh, you're making my life miserable, something like that. That you are mourning in the face of your parents. That hurts them. So hurting them more than just mourning by beating them up is definitely prohibited. A fortiori, by greater reason. These are the reasons which you can put under qiyas. And they are dictated by a set of reason and also enshrined in the Quran. The other things like Maslahah, because they did not look at the principle of basic permissibility and did not look at everything in the universe. Most actions are essentially ways and means. Ways and means. And this basic ruling of permissibility. That solved 99% of the problem of Yasir Qadhi and Al Haj, and shows that the classical fiqh, so most classical fuqaha have completely failed to apply it, and then they were forced to find recourse to qiyas, and most of their qiyas are filthy. You go, for example, let's give an example, just you can laugh. They Ibn Hazm make it a mockery. Some of them said there's a minimum mahar. Why there's a minimum mahar? Should be no less than a mahar. With this way, they are actually rejecting a hadith which are well established. Minimum mahar, say, because a hand can be cut in theft unless it is set above so much of dinar or the price of a shield. Shield in a battlefield has set a price at the time of the Prophet, which I think quarter dinar or something. I'm not sure, or 4 dinar or something. Anyway, a number. And they will have been walking them say, what has permissibility to enjoy the sex with your wife? That's the mahar is supposed to be like a token representing that you are buying something. Actually, in time past, the mahar was a price you pay to the father of the girl, actually compensating him for bringing her up. Or that was substantial, like as if you are buying a slave, you are buying a wife. Even in some cultures, called buy a wife. In Africa, until now, you have to bring 10 cows, 50 cows, and so to buy a wife. So, and then Ibn Hazm mocks say, what has the relation of cutting a hand with enjoying the intercourse and the intimacy? How can you make qiyas to this? Besides, it contradicts the clear hadith, but maybe the scholar did not got that hadith, that Rasulullah gave a woman who she presented herself for free to the Messenger of Allah, which is allowed according to the ayah in the Quran. But he didn't seem to be interested in her. He looked up and down, and then he didn't say anything. He said, I gift myself to you, Messenger of Allah. And the narration say he looked up and down, and then he spoke down and didn't say anything. Messenger of Allah is kind. He will not say, I don't want you. A man sitting there said, Messenger of Allah, you don't seem to be interested in that woman. Give her to me in matrimony. I said, which mahar you have? I say, I have only my clothes. Say, you have only one clothes, you're naked? Look for something. He went looking in the house, say, I have nothing. Look, even if you find a ring of iron. A ring of iron undesirable, because I'm prohibited using iron because it rusts and filthy and dangerous. But say, a ring of iron, there's none. I say, do you have some Quran? I say, I have surahs, so and so mentioned, like 10, 15, small surahs most likely. Say, then that is her mahar. You teach her this surah. Do you have any surahs? Say she has only Fatiha and 1, 2 surahs. You teach her these 10 other surahs. No, you could say teaching a surah is valuable more than 100 dinars, but it's not monetary. So this is already settled by the hadith and Messenger of Allah. It is a token substituting for the price of time past. Nothing more. That's a gift to, and this for the wife. It doesn't go their father, no compensating anything. So that's settled. You don't need to give filthy qiyas. So that's why they got stuck in it. Because there must be something minimum mahar. It cannot be just, and something we don't like, because prostitutes were usually available at the time for 3 dirham. 3 dirham, you could have a prostitute for 1 intercourse, let's say it frankly. And I hate that the mahar will be like less than 3 dirham because it looks like a prostitution. But it's completely different. Prostitution is not prohibited because the mahar or the payment is 1. It's prohibited because it's not a contract, a valid contract in Sharia with obligation, and after it can be only dissolved with idda, etc. That's only the reason. Otherwise, we have for temporary marriage, which we have established in some of our papers that's valid. Yeah, there's a limitation of 3 days, etc., upwards and so on, but it has its own mahar and things like that. And it can be even almost without mahar, like recitation Quran or taking for Hajj or something like that. So you see, I gave this simple example because every Muslim or every listener will understand it easily. I don't want to go into complex issues because they did not understand really what's the meaning of qiyas, which claim they understand, because it's so similar. You are allowed to cut a hand, and Ibn Hazm say intercourse is not cutting the vagina. So what has the cut with cut or something like that? Obviously, he's mocking because there's no comparison. But somehow in their mind there must be some minimum mahar. No, why should be there minimum mahar? Omar also pondered one day that mahars are getting excessive, and he was thinking to limit them. And Omar rebuked him, say, how can this? When Allah said, if you give one of them as a 100 weight of gold, you cannot take anything. And then Omar stepped back. Although the 100 weight is actually Quran, meaning metaphorical. Whatever you give them, you cannot take back, whatever it is. But mentioning the 100 weight, 100 weight is a possibility. You cannot take anything of it back. So if you just look at the Quran comprehensively, not one ayah or a part of ayah, a quarter of ayah. That's also a catastrophic mistake made by classical scholars. They cut the Quran in pieces and you take one ayah and forget the other one ayah. That's cut the Quran in pieces, as if dismember the Quran. That's one, and it's a major crime. And the Jews are accused of that. And Mushrikeen accused that they make the Quran adeen. How did they make the Quran? They said, Muhammad, listen, your Quran is very nice, these ayahs and these, but this ayah we don't like. Can you take it out of the Quran? They want to make the Quran adeen. And the other thing is, if you cut the Quran like that, you take ayah out of context. That's tahrif al-kalim an mawadih, twisting words from their positions, either by reinterpreting words and playing games with the word, or taking a sentence or an injunction out of the context. So that's how the problem developed, and we have the fiqh which in many areas have a nasty similarity to the Talmud. Let me give you another example. In a Hanafi fiqh, where it caused the problem, and then the Hanafi scholars of India and Pakistan and Bangladesh were forced to find some kind of a trick. The Hanafi fiqh influenced by the Talmud, but possibly by Old Testament. I don't know if it's the Old Testament or the fabrication of the Jews. It doesn't matter. Influenced by previous Shariah. There's some kind of prohibition or disliking of shellfish. Yeah, that's well known. Certain type of fish and shellfish. Somehow, Imam Abu Hanifa regarded previous Sharia as being valid unless our Sharia abrogated explicitly. Not our fundamentally proven with irrefutable evidence that all previous Sharia have been abrogated. Everything is gone, and we are down to the basic rule of permissibility. He did not notice that. Based on that, the Hanafi madhab was widely spread in India and so on, also in Bangladesh, put the people there in difficulty, because the Bangladeshi are known to be essentially, especially near the sea, and there are millions of them near the Gulf of Bengal. They are living on fish and also shellfish. So they needed to do long-winding arguments about it is only undesirable and because of necessity and needed for life. They give permission for that. It's permitted from zero level. There's no prohibition in the first place. So all of that say that the Shoka have been adjusting to urf and the conditions is based on the original derivation are faulty. That's number one. So that's number one concerning the issue, and they talk about urf. Urf is related to establishing measures and so on according to the people in the site, because it had to be kept like that. Like, for example, if a mahar is not specified, but a mahar is obligatory, then it has not been specified in the contract explicitly. What to do then? The fuqaha said, we see what the society in that village usually have as a mahar. Then we assume this mahar is due to this wife. What is in the society? Now, obviously, in a village, in an agricultural society, maybe the mahar there is one cow. While in an upscale area in London, near Kew Garden, a mahar may be £100,000, the average, or rich people and so on. So if she's from that environment, we assume that she expected a mahar like that, even if it's not. So that has to be established based on what people agree as a common mahar. But a mahar that's the ruling, a mahar must be paid. If it's not specified, then how to establish what the proper mahar according to urf, what the people in that area and that society level expect us to be a reasonable one, and that change from place to place. this amount of money is reasonable, or this amount of compensation is reasonable. In other areas, the Sharia fixed it. They did not rely on reasonability. For example, for diya, it fixed it by like 100 camel or 200 in the case what we call second degree or third degree murders and so on. There's very details. Did not leave it to any, or in dinar this and this amount, for example, 1,000 dinar and things like that. And this fixed by dinar. So you see, in some places it's left for urf because it's flexible and dependent on the social situation and the demand. Otherwise, the best way to solve that is that you should specify the mahar, and then you don't need to go for urf. That's where urf apply. Or, for example, in weighs and measure, most measuring devices have a certain accuracy. It is forgiven, for example, if you measure and you're working in tons, it's forgiven if there's a mistake of a few grams. That's the urf, for example. It's regarded as negligible, but not forgivable like half a kilogram or 1 kilogram. Instead, nowadays, in time past, the measuring was a little bit lax. We don't have such accurate measures, although they were relatively accurate. But you can have, for example, if you use a volume measure, most Muslim business people, when we fill they don't and fill it, for example, with wheat, let's say, they make like a top, they fill it at the top, and there is like a small mountain there to be in the safe side that they really give the full measure and plus extra. Although, strictly speaking, they would remove that. You see, that will be just exactly to the top flat, but they are giving a little leeway because the measures are not that accurate. Now we have very accurate measures into a milligram, so you can demand that the urf. In these things, the urf will play a role. That's the meaning of urf. It's not meaning that a haram habit in an area is sanctioned by Sharia. If it's a haram habit, it has to stop. For example, in wedding and marriages, there are great variation between people and feel what to do with marriages. For example, in Najd, in Saudi Arabia, it is the usual habit in Najd that the groom goes to the bride house and spend the first night there at their house. But people in Hijaz will be shocked if they want something like that, because usually the groom comes and pick up the wife and take her to his house. That's okay, and that's okay. Sharia does not make any injunction. He has the right to the first night. They have to enjoy the first night wherever they want to. Maybe some people say, actually, in her family house, it may be like the Najdi style. She may be embarrassed or something else, especially virgin and in society which is not promiscuous, and then let them go to a hotel. If you suggest that in time past to people in Najd, they will kill you. What is this? They regard it as they don't trust the family, or you want to take the girl and do something to her. Because if in her, the point of view is that if it's in our house, then we can keep tab on things and watch carefully that he behaves reasonably at night, does not become excessive or something like that. Maybe that's in their mind. That's their mind. But there's no Sharia injunction here or there, or there, or there. It's in the wedding night, you have the right of intercourse with your wife. Obviously not by force, etc. There's the Sharia injunction of that in a gentle way, etc. Not like an animal. There are very Sharia injunction instruction for that way, by the way. But none of say it is in her house, in her father's house, or in your house in a hotel, or you take her for Umrah. You can do either one. Maybe a society say the best thing to start is to start maybe with a Umrah. This will be obviously applicable only if people are near the Haramain. I don't know about any tribe having this habit, but it may develop in certain time. We don't know. That's all permissible. It's permissibility. If the people agree in something, then you should comply. You don't need to be offensive to your in-laws and come, no, in our Najd, it is like this and this, as if it's Sharia. No, that's taking off on board. That's the meaning of taking off. Common sense and common agreement, what the people are accustomed to, as long as it is within Sharia. As long as it's within Sharia. For example, it became urf in many Muslim countries that between the conclusion of the contract until consummation is usually a time the husband prepares and so on. In Egypt, it's become very excessive because, and this is a bad urf, but that's the urf. You have to work with it somehow and try to, and the scholars should really educate the people to get over it. You may wait several years until the furniture is made because they made custom furniture and so on. That's a bad urf, but you have to comply with it. And the Sharia does not say no. It may say that's not desirable. You should educate the people. Otherwise, you can get out of that. But it's okay still. It's really. In other places, they don't have the concept that contract and the consummation should be at the same time. Almost. That's in the afternoon in the masjid, and the evening is the consummation, for example. That's all depending upon urf. This is permissible, and this. The point is that this is permissible, and this is not any one of them haram and cannot be accepted as urf. That's the point. So it seemed to me they are not able to understand the basic ruling of permissibility. Somehow in their mind, I must ask, for example, can you pick your nose? You don't ask this question. It's basic ruling permissibility. It's your nose and it's your finger. It's not somebody's else finger. You are transgressing on his privacy. It's your own finger. Unless a state injunction say it's not nice to pick the nose in front of you, for example. There's no injunction like that. We say unless something like that comes. But otherwise it's permissible. Etc., etc. So the failure to recognize that even issue of urf and so on and the basic rule of permissibility led to this mutilated Jewish style or Talmud style fiqh in Islam, unfortunately. And school of thought are relatively different in that. The Hanafi madhab, in the matter of transaction and business and so on, is more liberal, meaning closer to the fundamental principle of basic ruling of permissibility. And also it has an important sub-rule, I will mention it now. And but concerning rituals is very narrow and tight, almost Talmudic. You go for Hanbali, it may be more on so, but wavering, because Ahmed bin Hanbal was, if he gets a fatwa from Sahaba, he regards that he has to comply with the fatwa, which is not correct. His usul are faulty. So all this, that's fiqh, which these two mashayikh are discussing, which seems to be restrictive, and they think there need to be an improvement, etc., and things like that, is because scholarly blunders or fatwa based on a Talmudic, ritualistic, formal mindset, not for, recognizing the fundamental injunction of Shariah, that's the basic rule of permissibility, and also the other fundamental is that everything in the universe is basically good and pure, unless Allah tells you this one is excluded. Everything in the universe is both permissible to use it, whatever appropriate use. A rock, what meaning a rock is permissible for you? It's created for you. You can use it. What can you do with rock? You can cut it, you can use it for building, you can crush it, you can extract material for it, if it's useful. No idiot will go to a normal rock and try to extract gold from it. It will be an idiot, it will be wasting energy. But if you want to extract it, let him. Stupid. But it's permissible. You can eat it if you want, but who will eat rocks? But if it is, unless there's a well-established harm for this specific type of rock, which causes poisoning, it's then prohibited because of the poisoning and the harm, not because it's not permissible to eat rocks as a general principle, and so on. If you analyze things this way, 99% of the issues they're discussing will be resolved.
But in this discussion, they have kind of dialed back some of the prohibitions we'll find later. But I think the premise is important to establish, as you've done, in terms of this is where the open playing field exists because of permissibility.
That's that, and also as a sub rule of that, since contract is meaning a meeting of two wills, you can contract with anybody whatever you agree upon, provided it is both sides are happy with it and they agree. There must be agreement, rida. There must be acceptance and being pleased with both sides are being pleased. Yeah, that's the meaning of contract. So it's under the general rule of basic permissibility. You can do any contract you wish with the other side as long as it agrees. You agree, both of you. Yeah. And the moment it's concluded, there's an obligation to fulfill the contracts. Because the contracts is grave. So all contracts are permissible until the Sharia tell you that's not permissible and that's haram. For example,
you say that now. This is actually going to be discussed later when they get to the point on the agenda.
For example,
do you feel there's a need to? Do you want to discuss at this moment in time or later maybe the example of seizure of power, because this is something, a very vivid example they used in terms of when people would justify different forms of governments, and that's kind of been pushed into the same mix here, which I thought
that maybe we will give that a separate, because many people go around that because of issue of power. But let me use the basic things. So that will resolve many things. For example, when insurance was invented in Europe, there was like the end of the Middle Ages, the beginning of a commercial transaction by Venice and Genoa and so on. These were commercial cities, and they invented the issue of insurance, it came to the Muslim world. Hanafi scholars got stuck. Say, which kind of contract we have so can make qiyas? They didn't go to the basic ruling of permissibility. With the result, I say it looks like daman in Sharia, and daman is supposed to be not for compensation for money, but this is like daman, like daman, although it's not daman, like daman or guarantee, and for guarantee you cannot take money. Like for example, I am a guarantor for you. In the case you don't fill your contract, I pay in your behalf or something like that. You cannot take money for that. For that, yeah, but this is not a guarantee. This is people cooperating together, putting money in a pool, at least at every time, or putting the pool managing by a company, that's also called commercial. And in the case someone is hit with mishap, all have agreed that we will help him and compensate him. That's not daman. This is cooperation and compensation. It's another type of contract. If you cannot really, because it's a new contract, they admit it's a new contract, is not known before. You don't look for a contract with similar. It's a new contract. So what is the basic ruling? It should be permissible and binding if it is done. Some people obviously come say, oh, these insurance companies, I just mentioned the insurance because this may be a point for many people are stuck. These insurance companies are working in usury. Also, car building companies are working with usury. That's a disease separately that they are producing cars, that they put their money in banks and go to usury because the whole economy is based on usury. But it has nothing to do with building cars. The same with insurance. How they invest their money, because the best investment available are usually usurious and interest bearing accounts and things like that for the insurance. That's the reason available in the West. That's what's it, but has nothing to do with the insurance contract. Some people say, oh, insurance for life, meaning you don't trust Allah and you think the ajal is not limited. What has to do ajal limited with people agreeing together if someone dies too early, he get a compensation instead of getting a pension at the end of time. So you come with all kinds of arguments to verify that what they regarded as prohibited because of their faulty qiyas is really prohibited, and things like that. So I think that problem is to be resolved. Is to secondly, because they Imam Malik especially started with the called, and although I think Hanbali took part of it. It's called closing the means. If something leads to haram, or you suspect it may lead to haram, they regard it as prohibited. It's prohibited. Most likely, if it is really leading by necessity and there's no way to avoid the haram in that case, definitely, because it's cause and effect are fundamental principles of reason. You have to take into account. But they made it very wide and closing the means and so on, etc. Like, for example, the face is fundamentally is not awra, for example, face of woman. But if someone looks to a woman, maybe he masturbate or something like that. It may lead to haram for someone. What is the solution for this person? Is to look away. There's no Sharia to order her, make it obligatory to cover her face and things that conclude that her face, because the main beauty in it, the main attraction, the face must be covered. And there are hadith, well-established hadith, Messenger of Allah, to show the opposite of their conclusion. So it is just their imagination and their internal complexes and obsession and Talmudic style fiqh is overcoming them, which led to these things which these two mashayikh are complaining about. So you have to go to clean the usul. Besides, they said, and this is what developed to almost to a level of to a catastrophic level, is that the Sharia, Ibn Qayyim said, the Sharia has come only to increase maslahah or benefit and reduce harm. Only the Sharia does increase maslahah and reduce benefit. It doesn't come for that. Why does the Sharia come? To test your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submission. Has nothing, but it is so designed because of Allah's mercy, generally, especially the final Sharia, by guarantee of Allah subhanahu in the Quran, but also private Sharia, with small exception, is to allow as much mubah and good things and prohibit as much bad and evil things. But it didn't come for that. It came to test that, are you accepting Allah as your Lord and Sovereign? Because in Mithaq al-Fitra, when Allah took from the backs of the sons of Adam their seeds and asked them, this is metaphorical, for that it's imprinted in your genes and your structure of the brain, the acknowledgement that you are finite and limited, and there is a supreme unlimited power, which is Allah Ta'ala, Lord, who has the right of command. So what he asked them, بس metaphorically. ألست بربكم? Am I not your Lord? Not your God, your Lord. They said, yes, you are our Lord. Say that you don't say Yawm al-Qiyamah, we were not aware about that. Obviously, Yawm al-Qiyamah, the question will be, if that when you were made aware about that, when you became conscious, did you comply with it? And they gave you even a head start by imprinting it you in your gene. That's it. So it's not a matter of counting Yawm al-Qiyamah. But look at the question. I am your Lord. Benefit and so on will take care of the system. Don't worry about that. I will take care of that in my Sharia. And I have liberty to take care of it to an extreme or to a less and so on. So that's what the whole business is all about. Is that the Sharia has come to fulfill the test. Are you my slave and call me as the Lord? That's the fundamental aspect of Sharia. And the injunction are that because of divine mercy, the Sharia will generally fulfill as much benefit and prevent as much harm. And the final Sharia will fulfill almost every benefit and permits every good thing and prohibits every evil things. Like the Quran says, one character of Muhammad, which Allah told Musa in Mount Sinai, but it's not in the Old Testament. That part is not. They cut it away. The prophet to come will say, I will send prophets of their brethren with these features. What the Quran mentioned about Muhammad, that when Musa supplicated for the people who were struck with the lightning and died, the 70, and then Allah awakened them as a mercy and for Musa. And Musa said, forgive us, we made a mistake and so on. And they say, my punishment, I can hit with whomever I want, obviously, who is worse for punishment. And my mercy encompasses everything. I will establish this mercy and write it down for those who follow the messenger, the illiterate, the final messenger, whom they found mentioned and pre-announced in the Torah and the Gospel. Who? That's his perspective. يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. He commands المعروف and prohibits المنكر, the despicable, and command the reasonable. So the commands of in the final Sharia, at least, but also in most other Sharia, are prohibiting and commanding, enjoining the reasonable, ma'roof, that everyone rationally recognized to be reasonable, and prohibiting the rejectionable, that people with the normal perception regard as reprehensible and rejectable and offensive. ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم. Permit for them all good things. Look, يحل لهم الطيبات. Halal is different than طيبات. طيبات are things which are good in themselves. Like, for example, let us say wheat. Let us say soybean. These طيبات. Because they are طيبات, you can consume them, they are beneficial. There's nothing is absolutely طيب except few things in the universe. But the benefits and so on overwhelm the bad aspects, because the universe is limited and it's a testing universe. So even good things may have, and most of them have some bad things, side effects, but they are minimal. They can be ignored. But Allah can have at liberty to prohibit them or allow them. The final messenger will allow all of them. He will permit all طيبات. So if he prohibits something, we يحرم عليهم الخبائث. He prohibits everything which is evil and filthy. So if the final messenger prohibits something, we know it must have some kind of aspect which make it filthy in such a way that the filth or the damage or the harm is already done, it's already finished. And because the basic ruling of simplicity, meaning essentially the whole universe is pure and good, basically. Only few things have to be accepted. All human activities are basically allowed and good. Only few have to exclude it. If you see this way, all that what these two mashayikh are trying to do is done and finished. It's gone. Because all evil things have been specified and is explicitly prohibited in this final Sharia. There is none there which is outside. In previous Sharia, it may have been, like for example, in Sharia, khamr is intrinsically, alcohol is intrinsically the negative or the bad side of it outweigh the positive side. It has. Does that positive? Yeah, it has. Khamr business is important. There are whole societies are producing khamr and making money and making a livelihood of that. This is a positive side, no doubt about that. But the other side, that it instigate hatred, that is make you an addict, that it undermine the mental capability. That's damaging for the system health-wise. All accumulated, but in previous nations, it was permitted to them. All what was permitted is to become drunk. Sometimes even it's permitted in certain festivities, like the Jews in a certain festivity, they have an allowance for 3 days to become drunk until they fall on the street. Otherwise, they are not allowed to, but they're allowed to drink. In the final Sharia, it was prohibited completely, cut from the root, radically and harshly. So to close any door for the khamr, for example. But in previous Sharia, Allah did not prohibit it. For example, Bani Israel, when they come out of Egypt, Musa told them, think about a favor, Allah will take you out of the river and make everyone of the king, master, owner of himself. Meaning, every one of you is part of running the state and the society. It is shura. But later on, they insisted to have a king. And they have a long dialogue with their prophet, Samuel alayhi salatu wasalam. And back and forth, and Samuel was upset, and according to the narration, which sounds really true. Although the Quran mentioned only one part of it, and they mention why the Quran mentioned only one part, which is relevant. They say, appoint a king so we can fight in the cause of Allah, and expose them that I lied when fight became obligatory, and the leader of the king, they bailed out. They show their cowardice. They show they want kingdom just in the hope that one of them will become king and he can grab power. That's their motivation. But the discussion was, someone was very upset and commanded, because before that, the prophets were managing them with shura, consultation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are not against you. They're against me. They don't want me to be their king. Tell them that. They're insisted on a king. Tell them kings are oppressive. That's also in Samuel. Go and read Samuel 1. Kings are oppressive. They will do this. They will do this. They will take your daughters, make them work like cosmetic specialist for his daughters, and comb the hair, one do the fingers, one do that. Okay? And they will take the best of your sons and the strongest, and he will put them in the military against their will. And even he will take the best of your donkeys for his army. They came back and said, no, we want a king. Allah said, okay, I permit you. See, I permit. Kingship is a bad system. It's a dangerous system. It's ultimately in the disaster. Tell them, I will permit you to have king, and you can't appoint for them a king, the first king you choose. But tell them, if they scream to me because of the oppression of their king down the road, I will not listen to them. But that cannot happen in this final Sharia. By the guarantee of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be no hardship and heavy injunction on the Sharia, at least in the final, when the Sharia was complete. Before that, was warned from too many questions, because it may lead to prohibition, because he's afraid. He did not got a revelation that will not, Allah guaranteed that will not happen. So he's afraid of that happening by the people asking back and forth and so on. Don't come back and forth. That destroyed the previous nations. But the Sharia has a guarantee inside that will not happen. But anybody if Sharia will not have it, that's the way it works. So Allah is at liberty to allow you a system which will destroy you, especially if you ask for it, like Bani Israel. Appoint us a king. He's the sovereign. He can allow evil things if he wants. But in this Sharia, out of mercy. So Sharia come for what? To make you to submit to Allah, to be obedient, to recognize that you are a slave and He's the Lord and the sovereign. That's it. That's the reason for the Sharia, that it fulfills most benefit, bring most benefit, and prevent most harm. That's definitely the case, but it not come for that exclusively like Ibn Taymiyyah. The word Ibn Taymiyyah is catastrophic. It is very catastrophic. It's undermined the whole Sharia, really. It undermines Sharia. From a man who started the bid'ah of so-called grave worship and so on. Here he made a blunder in the excessive direction, and here in the opposite direction, unfortunately. Because
just clarify what you mean by that, because I just think for the listeners who are not familiar, the invention of this word, of the concept of grave worship, is really objective.
Because there's no grave worship. What you call grave worship is not grave worship. Touching a grave, kissing a grave, making sweet the grave is not worship. Unless you believe the grave is a divine being or harboring a divine being and so on. Then it is not worshiping the grave, it's worshiping the one who is inside the grave. So there's nothing called grave worship. The mere touching and kissing does not make it, it's not a worship. Worship is attributing divinity to the item you are worshipping, or you are doing ritual to it. as we discussed in the book Tawheed from A to Z is about that. Go and read it and see how we rebut the Wahhabi from the root, not from the surface. But
Yeah, I think the
but
importance
that's
of
not our
this
issue today. That's not our this issue related to Aqidah and showing that side Aqidah in these areas are quite faulty. It's quite faulty. And even his definition of Lord and Rabb is fundamentally rotten and faulty, and so on. But that's for the Tawheed. But that's the reason Sharia has come to verify and check that you are submitting or recognizing him as the ultimate sovereign and Lord, and willing to submit to him. Otherwise, and sometimes Sharia is a few tests like Adam. Everything is permissible. Just go naked, do whatever you want, but don't come to this tree. Otherwise, you will be wicked. And the tree is allegedly has been wheat or has been apple, whatever it was. It's very good in itself. But for test obedience, that's it. So that's a fundamental point. You have to know that the Sharia has come to make you slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to complete, to establish and actualize Tawheed. It doesn't become just a mere word or a conviction in the heart. It becomes a way of life. Allah and His sovereignty and kingship is in the center of your heart. The universe is around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not around you. You have to rotate around. Allah is the axis of rotation and the center of gravity, not you. It's fundamentally different. So that's if you understand that and derive it from the Quran, and this can be driven with absolute certainty. We derive the issues, the meaning of worship, the meaning of rububiyyah and uluhiyyah with certitude in form of almost mathematical equations. Then most of these problems are solved. You don't need to see. Now let us see what specific problem they're addressing and try to solve it by appealing to Shatabi. Shatabi most likely did not intend really. He wanted to show that Sharia is good. It fulfills needs. He did not meant to, and I will say explicitly that, for example, the Sharia came to establish 5 fundamental necessities or needs: life, protecting religion, protecting life, protecting genealogy or human species, protecting wealth, and another protection, and protecting honor or something like that. And Sheikh TajdeedRevival added the 6th, protecting the public peace, public tranquility, and the public peace, the social order, so that there will be no infight in the society. You may add it, you may subtract it, because you could say this: if you do these 5 protection, the public peace will be protected. But protecting the public peace need really the state authority or the community to do certain action. So it may be like, but these are the purposes, and the Sharia fulfills them. What Shatibi wanted to say is that it's not usuli derived hukum from. This is from the hukum, from the totality of ahkam. We can see the direction of Sharia. This is good to present Sharia to a non-believer or to someone, a philosopher, to say, look, this show, it fulfills all these necessities, which human reasonably agree that is a necessity for a reasonable human-like society. It fulfills those, and hence it cannot be happening from someone illiterate in Arabia, created this way. It must be coming from elsewhere. It may be used as an evidence for Islam. This hukum has good results. This. For that purpose, not to drive ahkam. You cannot drive ahkam.
It's a sales pitch rather than
it's not to drive ahkam. Drive ahkam is the fundamental usul.
Okay. I'll play some more. So I know there's some areas we're going to have to circle back to in terms of like the ruling system, but there's a lot to cover here, inshallah. So I'll play the rest of it. Continue.
Well, this is fine theoretically. As you know, the devil is in the details, right?
Of course.
And as you're aware, there's a constant pushback and internal struggle and dialogue going on between ulama and du'at, between movements. As you're aware, you have the hardcore traditionalists, and then you have the both of us are coming from the Tajdeedi, Wasati, revival paradigm, exemplified by Rashid Ridha and others, of trying to rethink through. And then you have, of course, modernists and progressives.
I'll stop here for a second.
So you have
because concerning Tajdeed, first of the hadith that Allah sent in the head of every century, 100 years, someone who renew the deen. There are questions about the hadith validity. Is only one single in the channel of nation, but for barakah we adopt that in that sense that if it is, but we have to understand the meaning of deen, and that's again problem. What is the meaning of deen here? يجدد الدين. actually what is being renewed and supposed to be renewed, if it is authentic hadith, but also deen is using that meaning in certain other places, meaning tadayyun, devotion, to renew its devotion, to revive it. How do we know that this should be the meaning here? If it's authentic hadith, that we have another authentic hadith, is that the iman becomes worn out inside the heart, inside every one of you, worn like an old cloth. What's the name? What's the word used for old cloth? Worn out. Yeah, is that a correct English word?
I suppose worn, tattered. Yeah.
Tattered or worn. فجددوه, renew it, make it like a new cloth. Take the old one and put a new one by doing certain activities, by looking at yourself, reviewing your life, and so on. تجديد. فجددوا إيمانكم. That's the meaning here. It's not that the deen itself or the injunction can be changed and making new and old. They are abstract and exist, but your devotion and your commitment to them has to be reviewed again. It weakens. And this has happened almost naturally. First generation receiving revelation is usually very staunch and very devoted. The next generation tend to become lax. We have inherited the book. We are good people. We started as believer. Sins are not like our fathers were too strict in that. We can be easy. That's no phenomenon in human life. And so the Quran says people who have inherited the book, some of them say, okay, we will be forgiven. It's just like Muslim. It's just shahada and you get away. Don't be too strict. Don't be hambali. Don't be things like they have such catchwords like that. That's what it needed to be done to renew that devotion. But what blocks the renewing the devotion from in the Muslim world over the last century, since Muawiyah until now, is that the one who are attempting to do renewal, du'at in time past until very recently, and even until now, the most of them, they try to get the people to renew their devotion to a mutilated and contaminated fiqh. None that real renewal of understanding, meaning review that what the scholar in time past have developed and the rulers in time past have invented, some of them even bordering on kufr, and attack it strongly and staunchly, like what we do, alhamdulillah. That's not a place, but we are doing that, and that to them, that's not what I am called for Allah and His Messenger. Don't accept it. That will revive now. That's what we have inherited and regarded as difficult to comply with or contradict life and industrial life, etc. That was a mistake to regard that as the deen. The deen is much better. The deen in its original abstract form is complete and much better. And that's what will lead to renew of the understanding. There's not renewal of the deen. The deen in itself abstract exists and ideal somewhere there. But seeing it, understanding it can be renewed and improved. And based on that, the devotion will be then renewed and improved. So that's just to don't take that hadith as it is mutawatir or authentic. It's most likely questionable, but we say it and we use it for our name or movement just for barakah. And all generation time past have been speculating that may be correct. And they say, for example, the first renewal at the end of the first 100 years is Omar ibn Abdul Aziz, the Khalifa Umawi, the good Khalifa. And at the head of the 200 years is Imam Shafi'i, and the head of 300 years I don't know whom, etc. I try to speculate who is the munajaddid of the century and things like that. But that's questionable. That's even its authenticity is questionable. That's only one channel. You cannot build a deen on it. You cannot one channel relation. You cannot build even hukum shariah on it. But if the meaning is nice and so on, you can say it may be authentic, and the meaning is good if understood properly. So renewal of tadayyun, not renewal of deen. Deen cannot be renewed. Deen is some fixed in the revelation and complete. So what can be renewed is the devotion. First with the understanding. If the understanding have been mutilated, what can happen? Dust and contamination come. So separate the contamination. This will bring it pure out. That's a renewal. And then that, the devotion and commitment to it, in this case, if it has been contaminated and you remove that, most likely there will be a new devotion, a new admiration, a new commitment to it.
A couple of observations. So, for example, a misunderstanding which has a direct knock-on effect, you can imagine, is, for example, the loss of the shura. Another one is in terms of when the people, either it's in terms of accountability, or when it comes to devotion. people start to become excessive on critiquing people's ibadat while neglecting areas of ruling. So, for example,
critiquing rituals, you mean, not ibadah. Don't
Yes,
use
yes.
the word ibadah. Let's be cautious. Ibadah is not that. Critiquing people rituals because Islam and fiqh became ritualistic.
So tajdeed in that sense would be bringing it back to its essence. So, for example, a state, take the state, for example. The state's job is just to rule by Islam and to look after the affairs of the people, as opposed to delving into people's personal affairs and
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Tajdeed would be effectively going back to the more pure shura focused type of governance then.
Exactly, and show that this is fundamental the Islamic life, not taking what for example, look, for example, the movement of Muslim Brotherhood in early phase, at least I don't think if he's still using it as slogan anyway. They are so amorphous and they are melting away, and they have blundered so much. I think they are dead. The same with Hizb ut-Tahrir is dying out, which will take, unfortunately, some time, like a rotting corpse. It takes some time to disintegrate, and it stinks and so on. But unfortunately, that's how the way universe works. That's the test of Allah for all of us, to have patience in this process and just say, okay, people, close your nose and do something else. Leave that rot away. It's difficult to persuade the people who are in love with these organizations or born in these organizations. They can come to life after this. Even they say the worm in them, they're not willing to give up.
Partisanship.
The Muslim Brotherhood having the following slogan: we must get Islam rule so that Islam can be enforced, because Uthman said, allegedly, most likely Uthman did not say it, but maybe Uthman said, Uthman, not a messenger of Allah, a fallible man who was very weak and has many problems, even if he's the most eager, if he's Abu Bakr and Omar. What he said, إن الله لا يزع بالسلطان ما لا يزعه. Allah will move people in the right direction by the power of the state rather than by the power of Quran. And this is actually, if you look at it here, if the Quran will not get you in the right way by pondering about it, meaning there is a fundamental problem with you, then what the Sultan does is just coercion and aversion. And then you essentially, if it forces you in a certain direction, you are doing it for nifaq, not out of iman. But this is the wrong statement. You could say maybe the existing of the state and the state authority will deter thieves and so on. Actually, what deters thieves in the Muslim society mostly is their iman, that they know theft is haram. Yes, that they will be, if they apprehend it, will be having their hand cut if the conditions are satisfied. That's definitely a deterrence, no doubt about that, no doubt about that. But the real one who deters is that it's prohibited. And it's so despicable in Allah's eye that He ordered such a severe punishment, which the Western liberals say, "Oh, this is brutal punishment, unusual and cruel punishment for their taste, for their liberal taste." If that does not deter you, with the existing of the punishment that the state can apprehend you, because not every thief will be apprehended. Actually, nowadays, the majority of thieves are not apprehended, etc., etc. It doesn't mean that the punishment is. So the logic of that in Allah says we have Islamic rule. No, we have to Islamic rule because we are obliged to rule with Allah has revealed, and ruling with what Allah has revealed is that what makes the society peaceful. Because the Messiah say 5 for 5. One of them said, if the fahisha means usual sexual immorality, fornication, adultery, sodomy, and spread in some people, then they will be struck with diseases which were not in the previous generation. We see that, AIDS, etc., herpes, etc. And one of these 5s is that وَمَا لَمْ تَحْكُمْ أَئِمَّتُهُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَيَتَخَيَّرُ مِمَّا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. As long as if their imams, their leaders, the one in authority. Now, imam is not in the positive sense, just the leader, the one who have the ruling power and authority, and the one who established the rules in the society, even if it's just intellectual leaders. If they don't apply or rule with what Allah has revealed and choose from what Allah has revealed, because from Allah has revealed, there's many things are mubah. You have to choose from that according to the current situation. If they don't do that, لَكَانَ بَيْنَهُمْ, then between them will be what? The blood. It is inevitably causing peace, finishing of the social peace, and the people will split in factions. They will fight for benefits. This one say, you are an oppressive class, you are this, and they start killing each other. It developed until blood is shed. Before that will be hatred, split into society, when they can peak into blood, to the level of bloodshed and violence. Like we see in France after the election. When the right got the majority, the left made an alliance, and the right marched in the street, threatening and so on, violence, and attacking certain centers for the left, and the left, or the extreme left, made counterattacks and banned banks and banned shops. Because the whole system is not based on what Allah has revealed, and no choice of what Allah has revealed. It's based on human whims and desire. So that's the necessity of Sultan to rule. That's Allah revealed, because if you fail to do that, there will be no real peace in the society. Not because of the power of Sultan, because ruling with Allah has revealed. That's what brings peace in the society. So this is the twisted point of view in the whole side. Allah has Sultan ma lazim al-Quran. Even if it's Uthman said it, or even whoever said it. And the Messenger of Allah never said it. That's enough. It's enough to look with suspicion on that. Actually, it's the opposite. The Messenger of Allah always advised, if you detect a had between yourself, don't bring it to the authority. Try to forgive each other and solve yourself between you as a society. Because any had coming to me, I am obliged to administer. There's no forgiveness. تعافوا الحدود بينكم. Forgive her. And there was an interesting story. Ibn Abbas and one of his students, and Ibn Abbas and the Zubair, they apprehended the thief. A man apprehended the thief, and they interceded for the thief. Listen, this is the first time, the man has good history and so on, must be some problem, and interceded with him until he left. And then the man said, okay, I will get him to the authority, and after that I will accept. We say, no, if we get to the authority, we cannot interfere, because if the hudud, if the punishment come, or the issues are punishable come to the ruling authority, to the judge or to the state, then Allah will curse the one who intercede and the one who is interceded for. No intercession anymore. Nobody, everyone must shut up and do nothing. It's not. Now we can do, before it gets to the authority and become obligatory. And they got released. So when I was saying Ibn Abbas, when Ibn Abbas narrated this story, said, you don't do very well to get a thief released. Say, maybe your mother be bereaved from you. If you were the one at that time, you would have loved to get free. You are thinking selfishly. You don't think that you should not feel that for the other human being who committed a mistake, the same you don't think, if I commit the same mistake, what I wish for. You don't wish for your brother, what you wish for yourself. If you were in his place, you would have loved to be released. Look at Ibn Abbas. You would have loved to be released. Or your mother may die out. That's how Muslims should behave. Solve things before the authority, between yourself, in brotherly and kind way. Forgive sins, cover up for shortcoming. Don't report shortcoming which does not endanger society. Like, for example, someone is a drunkard and he was a neighbor to Omar, and he said, this man came to Uqba bin Amr al-Juhani. Although Uqba bin Amr al-Juhani is not the best of understanding of and sharpness and intellect, because Muawiyah was able to hijack him and take him on his side, fool him. Ask him, this man is drinking and so on. I will take the police. He said, don't do that. Advise him and cover for him up. And then said, I advised him. He's still insisting. Came a second time, the third time. But fourth time, I'm going in definitely to the police. Say, don't do it. I hear them say, whoever covers the awra or the shame of his brother, obviously like a private one, like drinking in his household, is like someone who got a buried girl out of her grave before she dies. Cover him up until the end of time. If he goes out drunk and some apprehend him in the street and the authority apprehend him, that's out of our hand. But you don't report him. That's not the way a good Muslim will do. These concepts have been disappeared from Muslim minds because of the oppressive regime of Muawiyah and onward. They are the one who expose and pursue people and terrorize them. Well, I'm just saying general atmosphere of what the meaning of authority and so on, and the understanding of the state. So the Islamic State is a minimal state, a very small state. You don't feel it. It's nowhere. It doesn't have spying organization inside the authority. And even police authorities and so on should only check and so on only if something happened, and they need to verify and find the one who did it, like someone was killed. Then you have to check who is the doer by asking the people going around. You don't do preemptive spying and things like that. But let's go see what the Mashaykh say about this usurping power, also, because this is the sore point which people are discussing.
Yeah, they're going to be going on a lot more onto that. They're also going to be discussing issues around governance. They're going to be discussing hudud. So there's quite a lot to get through. What I'll do is I'll play a reasonable amount, and then you can always interject whatever you feel. Also, they mentioned Russian Ridda as well, so maybe that's
to rethink through. And then you have, of course, modernists and progressives who really don't seem to care about the Sharia. So you have this entire spectrum. So again, the question is, in your mind, what is the red line? Like, up to what level? When would it be considered that you are actually rejecting the Sharia or trying to do that which is not allowed to do?
Okay, so when you try to change things that are not meant to be changed ever, there are certain things. There are the creeds that are not meant to be changed. There are the morality, the principles of morality in Islam. These are not meant to be changed. There are al-hudud wal-muqaddarat. There are the sort of the fixed instructions of the Sharia and quantifiable instructions of the Sharia that are not meant to be changed. There are mostly in the area of ibadat. The ibadat are never meant to be changed. So there will not come a time where fasting in Ramadan will start from Dhuhr and end at Asr or Maghrib. These things are never meant to be changed. But there is plenty of room for a change in certain areas, in international relations, in financial transactions, and some adaptability even in family rules or family laws. That's less. Sorry?
What mean transactions change? What change? Cancel the ruling for usury. All contracts are permissible, except the usury contract and the contract which contains cheating and not clearly every side showing clearly the not do the transparency and disclose all what they're supposed to disclose. And that's it.
I think in this instance he's coinciding with us in the general permissibility. Yeah. Where they're making the distinction.
Yeah, but he used the word change. Does not what mean the word change? Doesn't make any sense. Does not make any sense.
I suppose if he
means that the state may enact that, for example, when you do a sales transaction, you are obliged to disclose all faults and so on, and you will be punished and so on. State punishment, ta'zir, without a certain special punishment, just to protect people from ghish. Yes, but this is if the state feels that making it a public law because people are not complying or their amana or their commitment is weak, that's okay. But it's in Shariah it's prohibited for me to sell you a car which has certain faults. I know I am covering up. This is ghish. It's haram. It's kabira. Man ghashana falaysa minna. Now, if the state steps in and say all sales transaction and all companies and so on must disclose this and this and give a risk of disclosure, actually should be disclose any fault it's aware about. It must be disclosed, especially like this. That's okay. That's good, but that's not change. That's just to actualize and writing down maybe ways and means and procedures. That's it. Like, for example, what part of ghish is that if you change the what they call it the meter who measures how many kilometers you had or how many miles. Was it called? Not speedometer, the other one, manometer or something like that. Yeah. That's ghish because it will other side think it has only 70,000, an age of 70,000 miles, and turns out to be 170 because you played with it. That's blatant ghish. And if there's no public law saying you must disclose it, the judge will know you should have disclosed it, and then he will void the contract and may administer a certain punishment against you on his own ijtihad. It doesn't need to be a general public law, but if it becomes widespread, or the ruler or the Majlis Shura actually is the one who should adopt and enact law, says no, we have to have really a disclosure law in which things are specified so that nobody can think, so I didn't know that. Although everyone knows that, by the way. Everyone knows that. But in secular society, you have to do it in a law because there's no punishment without a law. And the Roman law is based on caveat emptor. The buyer must be beware. No, the buyer must not beware. Everyone must be beware. This is a pagan rule, not a Sharia rule. So they need to fix that and issue then complicated law, and then you have to specify as many disclosures as possible, because if you don't specify something, you say it's not specified in the law, I can't do it, because they have no barrier internally. They don't think that there will be akhir, and they will question, come here, show me why didn't you disclose this. But that's not included in the secular state laws. So they have to specify everything, and they have to detail it. Otherwise, a lawyer will come say, "This is not, the law does not specify that. How can we punish without? There's no punishment without law." That's true. But in Islam, that already is enshrined in the law, even if it is not in a public statute, and the judge will know that, and he has to administer it, and he will detect it. So I don't know what he means with change. I can't understand when of change. It doesn't change.
Yep.
It is just actualized. It is actualized. The word is wrong.
Well, as we go on, I think when he starts giving more examples, because he's going to go and discuss about the modern state, he's talking about gradualism. That'll be some significant material to comment on, inshallah.
Yeah.
I'll just crack on with it, inshallah. Then we can interject. So, for example, accepting Shariah in its entirety, this gradualism. There's quite a few things we can interject.
Amenable to change, closer to ibadat than it is to muamalat, but there should still be some room for adaptation to new realities in the world.
So who gets to decide, Sheikh?
The qualified scholars, the mustahideen, and that's why we have it.
So there will be an internal disagreement at times.
Certainly, most
So
certainly.
those outside of that circle should understand where qualified scholars disagree and where they are unanimous in this regard, right? Because one of the problems we have is, again, the quickness with which any type of discussion of the type that you're doing is automatically disqualified, because there's a knee-jerk reaction to any type of fine-tuning that the Sharia actually allows. So I'm going to now do a deep dive and do specific topics. And again, for the record, this is not scripted. We're just, I have questions and ideas in mind, but this is something coming organically, inshallah ta'ala. So I want to hear the Sheikh's view, and obviously I have my views, and we can discuss them back and forth. But let's begin with one of the most constantly discussed issues over and over again, and that is the hudud and apostasy laws.
Here are the top 3 reasons.
So he's going to go to apostasy. Again, another break's coming up. Bear with me. I'll just get through this advert.
Again, because they thought, because of 2 hadith which are misunderstood, only this hadith, that there's a death penalty or there's punishment for apostasy. Yes, apostasy may have other legal implications like separation with a wife and things like that. That's another issue. But let's get the apostasy, meaning the punishment, death penalty for apostasy. Death penalty for apostasy is only if it is taking someone out of the community or joining the kuffar under the banner, etc., as specified in the ayah. The hadith they rely upon, coming from 2 channels, and there's question mark about one of the channels anyway, is man baddala deenahu faqtuluh, who changed his deen, doesn't who apostatize, because the apostasy in Quran is having a specific word clear, and the Quran, this is the ridda. And what does the Quran say about ridda? Whoever make ridda, steps back from his belief and dies as a kafir, will be entering the hellfire. That's it. Nothing in dunya. And baddala deenahu, this is only the hadith. In the Quran, the main thing is there's a description of munafiqeen, and they are even excluded. Like, for example, the munafiqeen who broke even their immigrated outside the domain, but they abstained from fighting the Islamic domain. And the Quran says clearly, and we have an appendix in various researches with this ayah, the chain of ayah. At the end say, avoiding you and avoiding their people. They don't support their people and don't want to fight you. And they are standing aside. For those, Allah didn't give any recourse against them. Just leave them alone. And even it says, if Allah wanted, He would have moved them against you. So just leave them alone if they step in. So if someone commits apostasy without exiting the community or going in rebellion, or in time past it was usually connected to rebellion. Nobody will do apostasy in that sense, and say rebel or leave the domain and run away. That's usually. But in modern times, it happens without this. Then you have, he's not fighting, has no recourse against him. There may be some issues related, for example, if someone apostatizes, and he has children were produced when he was a Muslim. So they are, because they are born from a Muslim, they are Muslim by default in dunya ruling, not in akhirah ruling. We don't mean akhirah what will be, but in dunya ruling. If he apostatizes, does he have still wilaya and custodian of them? No, his custodianship will disappear. it's the same apply for women, but their hadana, their fosterage for small children up to 7 years does not fall away because he needs the mother for life necessity, even if she's a kafir, unless she's not qualified. For example, a woman is mentally deranged or publicly committing crime and so on, so that a judicial situation can arise that even if she's still nominally a Muslim, cannot be fit to caretake her, then a judge, but it must be a judicial ruling. Judge, this woman is fit, the children should be taken and given to another woman who should be then their nursing mother and things like that, as the judge decides according to the situation. That may be related also to apostasy, but it's not apostasy punishment. Is it related, the issue related with being a Muslim and custodianship and inheritance and things like that? But the issue of hadd al-ridda, execution, is a fallacy. And all the hadith, all the narratives they invoke usually from Omar and so on, all of them are related to warriors, people who separated, and even in that Omar was Medina. Like, well, let me give you the following story. One Sahabi came with booties from Iraq, and he showed the booty to Omar. Omar said, "MashaAllah." They said, "What did these people who ran away to the Persian?" So I showed him more booty just to divert the issue. He tried to divert it. Omar insisted. You don't tell me about this guy. What happened to them? Say, let's check first these booty. And Omar said, "You seem to be running away. What has happened to them? Tell me." Say, "We were able to catch them, apprehend them." Say, "What do you do with them?" Say, "We put them forward and cut their necks. We struck their neck." Omar said, "Allahumma inni lam ashhad." Oh Allah, I did not attend. I was not present. All what they did is actually correct. Because they joined the enemy, they are warrior, and they were apprehended, they can be killed. No doubt about that. And they should be killed. The question between scholars, is it obligatory to kill, seems to be the action. Almost say it's not obligatory, there's an option. Say, didn't you put them in a house and lock them away and give them every day one piece of bread for several days? Maybe they will review their point of view and come back to Islam. Allahumma shahad, I did not approve that. And he wrote everywhere, if anyone you think everyone is liable of being executed in any case for apostasy or whatever you think, things like that, then send to me so that I approve the execution. No execution without my permission, so I can check that no mistake has been made. So our point of view is those who run with the enemy, who deserve death and can be killed in the battlefield and killed after apprehension, they even don't want to give the opportunity to come back to Islam. And someone say, Omar has a point, because they ran away for whatever reason, there's tribalism or some conflict or something with the commander or something like that, and they may come now to their senses after they apprehend, to say that they have failed, and they may come to their senses and come back to Islam. So Omar wanted to give us that, but these are warriors, they deserve death. There's another story. They say that one king of Syria, Jabal ibn al-Ayham, I think was it, embraced Islam and came to Mecca, allegedly. That's the story. You heard the story about the justice of Umar and equality of people. That's brought usually as an example. And while he was doing tawaf, some and still in the arrogance of kingdom, someone stepped off his long. He has a long cloth which was pulled behind him, or a long top part which was down, and stepped on it. And he became angry like usual, an ex-royal, and he smashed him in the face and broke his door. So he complained to Omar, the one who was nose broken. And Omar said, the Shariah says, Qisas. He has the right to slap your nose and break it, or negotiate with him a compensation. Say, how can I be equated to him? He is just a common man and I'm a king. Say, that's the time past. Islam has made you equal in blood and dignity and so on. So say, let me think about it. That's the story. Usually you find the book of the Seerah and so on, mission, how Umar was just and well balanced, which is true. And then at night, at fog at night, he departed with his horses and his entourage, leaving Mecca, accelerating towards Sham and joining the Rome and apostatizing from Islam. And there, because Umar said, he said in the discussion, Umar, then I leave Islam. If that's Islam is making you equal to a common man, I'm leaving Islam. So if you leave Islam, I'm strike your neck. I will strike your neck. This may be a threat from Umar. But Umar will not tell him, yeah, okay, you can leave Islam. No, if you leave Islam, I strike your neck. Because in that case, he's rebelling against the ruling, if the story is true. And then he in the Roman, and they allegedly he made a poetry say that the noble people became Christian again because of a slap on the face, and he's regretting and things like that. That story, but actually the story is even not out. Even if it happened, that's the interpretation. As I said, it's nothing to do with apostasy. Omar threatened him. That's all what is there, and most likely he would not have. He cannot be apostatized in that environment with the war going with the Roman without really leaving to the Romans. So it will be a warrior apostasy. Will be joining the hostile belligerent enemy. So it's a harb. Is a act of war. It's not a pure apostasy while you are in the domain, not doing any act of war. Or he said, I'm not submit to that rule. This rebellion against the public order. You have to submit to the public order. So if it is true, but most likely it's a question mark, because another narration, which seems to be stronger, that Jabal ibn al-Ayham, who was in Jordan, decided when the Muslim became victorious, and he was participated in the battle of Yarmouk and was one of the losers of the battle, he decided, I cannot tolerate that, and he joined the Roman. So this is another narration. Which one is true? But independent of that, even if the first one is the true one, it's clearly for me it is not just for apostasy. It's for rebellion against the public order. You have to submit to the law. You are equal. That's the constitutional system. You don't like it, you are rebelling against it. It's not just apostasy. So then I leave Islam. Who should blame me? So if I leave Islam, that will not. No, it will apply to you. Will strike your neck if you do that. That's the interpretation. Thirdly, even if Omar really believes that pure apostasy is punishable by death, that's his point of view. The Quran is clear against that. Look at the ayahs of Munafiqeen and how the Messenger of Allah treated Munafiqeen all his life. Whose kufr and apostasy is well established and enshrined, but they were not warrior. So that's a concerning apostasy. You need to do a new ijtihad. You have to go, what is the meaning of apostasy? What was going on? What are these narration mean? What's the meaning of mabaddal deen of faqtuluh?
This is your document on the citizenship.